Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for Season 1, Episode 1 of Manifest on NBC. So I just got done watching the series premiere of Manifest on NBC tonight, and overall I was going into it with pretty high expectations, but still with that knowledge of what NBC, kind of dramas like this have done in the past. And I was very disappointed with The Brave last fall. If any of you watched that, I've done reviews for it on the channel for all season 1. And then also I've had a few other shows in the past, American Odyssey being one of them, that just really is disappointing me with NBC. And now, with The Brave and everything, so I've kind of lost faith in NBC a little bit, but I decided, okay, I'm going to give them another chance here with Manifest because it seems like such a cool concept, and the cast is really what drew me into this one. I know Athena Kirkanas, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Zoo, of course, J.R. Ramirez from Power, and then Josh Dallas, I believe, know him as well, and then from Valor we have Melissa Roxburgh. So the four main cast members here I'm all familiar with, and I've seen their other shows, and so that was one of the main draws for this one, and let me tell you, they don't disappoint. I think the cast does a really great job in this pilot or premiere, whatever you want to call it. So anyways, I'll get into a quick recap of the episode, so there will be a little bit of spoilers here, but if you haven't heard yet, if you haven't watched the episode yet, I am going to be doing my rating, favorite character, and then some more overall thoughts of the pilot and the series as a whole. So maybe I'll put a timestamp in the comments for that. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, you can kind of skip ahead to that. Should be, the last few minutes of the video. And for now, I'll be going into the recap for those of you who have seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's not going to be a huge deal. I'm not going to, okay, there's one kind of, reveal at the end of it that may spoil things for you. But other than that, this is all just stuff that you can most likely get from the trailers and the teasers and all that stuff. So anyways, let's get right into it with Manifest Season 1, Episode 1 here. So we start off with April 7th, 2013. So obviously not current times, right? About 5.5 years ago from when the current times is now set, right? So we get introduced to Michaela, right? Not really introduced, but we kind of see her on screen, and she is the one narrating this story, which I will share my thoughts on that a little bit later. But anyway, so her sister-in-law, Grace, and her niece, Olive, along with her parents, so her older parents, are going on the flight that has, so they overbooked the flight, right? So they were all originally going on the same flight from going home from the vacation on in Jamaica. And so what happens is the flight gets overbooked, and a couple of them have to stay behind. So she decides, Michaela and Ben, her brother, and his son, I'm forgetting his son's name right now. But anyway, so his son, Ben and his son and Michaela stay behind, and then they just decide to take the next plane, which ends up being the 828, right? Or the 828. So, anyways, and so of course this has huge ramifications for the story, and is pretty much where we start off. So, anyways, I did really like this quote that she said in this moment, as she says, "Funny how one little decision can ruin your life, but also save it." So I feel like that's kind of the slogan or the motto, or the theme of this show. And it's an important theme as well. I mean, not just in, taking the wrong plane or whatever, but just in life. So I really felt like that was a good kind of theme to push early on in this episode, and they do it within the first couple minutes. So I do really like that. I gotta give them credit for that. So that's where we start, right? So that's where we start. So then we kind of skip forward to her being on the plane with her brother and his son now, or her nephew, whatever, right? And so the plane she is on, right, they're on, begins hitting major turbulence, and the lights actually flicker off, and it does not seem good, right? The turbulence is very heavy. The one man says afterwards that he thought the roof was going to fall off, right? So obviously not very comfortable. And then after a few moments, everything is fine again. And it seems like they're right back to normal, right? And they're just headed home. So it looks like, and the captain says they just ran into a little bit of turbulence that wasn't on the radar. Everything's good. The plane's still working, and we're going to be flying home, right? We're going to be heading home. And so then we see the captain. He begins calling into air traffic control, just as he usually would. And the agent on the other end doesn't understand his call sign, right? So he's saying, Mongolia 828, right? And the agent is like, what? Like, please repeat, so he doesn't understand it all. And this is where we kind of start to get that mystery in here, right? So they must land at a different runway, right? Because this guy doesn't understand who they are and what they're doing. So they understand this, and they finally, go to this other runway. They land, and right when they land, the police surround the plane, and everybody must get off immediately, right? Because this is a huge, huge mystery. So then an agent actually comes over to all the passengers that are waiting. It was like 190 or something like that, the captain said. And so he comes over and announces to them that the date is now November 2018. And they have been missing for 5.5 years. Crazy, crazy stuff. So that's what this show is all driven on here, is that concept of they essentially go on this plane. What seems to be a few moments for them is actually 5.5 years for the rest of the world, and now they're kind of thrown back into this world. Not aged a day, like it's felt like a few moments to them, but for others it's been 5.5 years. So it's pretty crazy, right? And I really like this, so that we see that reaction right away to this, because this is huge news, but it doesn't really hit home until you see the effects that it has on these characters specifically, but just all the passengers, right? So 36 hours later, they're finally able to, the family members are finally able to come and visit. So they're invited to see the passengers, and none of them can understand what has happened. Not just our main characters that we have met, but just every family out there just does not understand what has happened and how they are back, how they haven't aged a day, right? It's crazy. So anyways, this was like the big first thing that we saw is Ben's daughter Olive is significantly older now than his son. And we got to remember, they were twins when they left on the plane ride, and now Olive is significantly older, because she's 5.5 years older now, right? And she looks totally different. So that was kind of just, a really, like, it hit home, right? That was a huge thing right when you saw her. It was like, wow, like, this is real. 5.5 years actually have passed, right? So that was big. And we see his son struggling with this. He is so overwhelmed, he actually just runs away because he can't handle the news. But it even gets worse than that, because then Michaela's dad tells them that their mother has passed away. And Michaela can't believe it, because she just saw, their mom, less than 48 hours ago, less than 2 days ago, and now it's been 5.5 years, and she's now since passed. So, really, really tough news for her and Ben. One thing I would do say in this scene is Ben does not seem fazed that much, and, like, it is his mom. Michaela seems very emotional and very affected by this, and Ben just doesn't seem to have that same emotion, that same feeling. I didn't understand that quite in this scene. Maybe Michaela was closer to her, maybe he was closer to the dad. That could be the case, but still, I would expect a little bit more emotion from Ben. But anyways, that is what it is. So those were the 2 points where Olive was a lot older, and now their mother has passed away. Those two things have kind of reaffirmed this and said, wow, like, this is real. This isn't a dream, like, this actually is happening, right? And this time has passed, right? So now it's all about integrating back into the world, which is going to be the most difficult part of all of this, right? And so that's where we end off this first act. And I actually did catch the first act on NBC. I think they posted on Saturday it was up. So I actually did take a look at this. So this was the second time I watched it. So I suggest, if you haven't seen the episode and you're here, I suggest go over to NBC.com, watch this first act. I will tell you, the first act, in my opinion, is the best part of this episode. And I think it kind of goes downhill from there. But it's just, that's going to happen, right? Like, all the action is at the beginning of this episode, right? Like, you can't really help that. So anyways, very fast-paced first act, though. I mean, we're talking 10 minutes and all this stuff happens. So very fast-paced. So then we get back into the world, the current world, right? With all these characters kind of getting thrown into it. So Michaela finds out that her fiance, Jared, played by J.R. Ramirez, loved him in Power, man. It was sad to see him go in that show, but good to see that he's back and got another project here. So anyway, so Jared has gotten remarried, and now her life has completely changed in the 5 years. Not just Jared, but also her job at the police department, I understand, and just everything. I mean, her mom's dead. She doesn't have her fiance anymore. She doesn't have her job anymore, right? So everything is totally, totally different, and really crazy. And she's even considering, she says to, I believe it was Ben. I'm not sure if it was this scene or later, but she says how, part of her wishes that they wouldn't even have come back. And that's a pretty strong thing to say. And that's also just because of everything that has happened now that she's kind of been forced into it, right? So then this is where the mystery all really begins. Is she's riding the bus later that day. Everything seems normal, right? But she begins to hear this voice, which is her own voice actually, but in her own head, saying the word slower, right? And it's repeating over and over again, slower, slower, right? And then she actually starts to get kind of a headache because of it, or just, get a sudden, hit, right? And she becomes dizzy. And so then she tells the bus driver, she yells at him, slow down, right? And it ends up, he actually does slow down, he slams on the brakes, and he just misses hitting a kid that walks out onto the street. So, crazy stuff. And he's like, how did you know that, right? And we're all thinking the same damn thing, right? This is crazy. How did she know that? And why is this voice in her head telling her that, right? Crazy stuff. So, anyways, this is where the mystery begins. Then we see her later in the episode as she's jogging past these dogs on the sidewalk. Again, seems like a normal, occurrence. And she hears a voice suddenly saying, set them free, right? Over and over and over again. So she ignores it. She just kind of goes home. She doesn't think much of it. Well, she does, sorry, but she doesn't, she's not going to do it. She's not going to let these dogs go, right? She doesn't see a purpose in that. So she ignores it, but then when she gets back home, she hears it again later, and it actually seems to really bother her because her head starts hurting, and it keeps repeating over and over again, right? So because of this, she goes back to these dogs and goes to set them free, and just as she's about to do so, her brother Ben pulls up as he has heard the exact same message as her. Set them free, right? And so this was pretty crazy, right? So they both hear these voices in their head, and they both say, not a fluke, right? It's not a fluke that they're both hearing the voices more than once, and the exact same voice saying, set them free, about these dogs. So they end up doing it. They end up setting free the dogs, and then later on, we find out that the dogs were not what they were freeing, of course. But anyways, so they free the dogs and they agree. This is not a fluke. We're both hearing the voice, right? They acknowledge it. So then her ex-fiance, Jared, tries getting her off the charges because someone has recorded video of her, and so they know it's her. And Jared is trying to be, nice to her, especially because, she came back and he was married or remarried, right? So, he's got to do something for her. So he's doing a favor for her, and he's trying to get her off the charges by returning the dogs to the man on the property, right, who owns them. And so she's kind of outside waiting at the car, but she now hears the voice again saying, set them free, right? So it keeps repeating in her mind. And at this point, she's like, well, what does that mean, right? The dogs are already back. I got to set the dogs free again, right? And so I do feel like they kind of fast-tracked this a little bit. Like, yes, it was a big reveal, but again, how did she figure out that to go into that trailer? Maybe it was because the dogs were sitting right in front of it, so she figured the dogs are there, the trailer's here, I got to open this. I don't know. Anyways, one way or another, she finds her way to the trailer on this property of this guy. She opens it up and finds two little girls being kept in the trailer. So things get really serious here really fast in this show, and I wasn't sure how far they would take it, and this is my answer. This was a pretty serious part in the show, and of course it actually makes sense. It comes full circle because Jared was talking earlier about two girls that had been abducted, right? And he was trying to solve the case. So these were the two girls that were abducted. They were taken by this man. So very, very unfortunate, by the way. Very, very unfortunate circumstance. But anyways, it take a serious turn, and I think it had to, though. It kind of hit home for sure. This is something that, is kind of an unforgettable scene in a TV show, so that was good. Anyways, so set them free meant the girls, of course, not the dogs, but of course they didn't know that at that time, and she is able to set these girls free, which is obviously, huge, right? Who knows what would have happened if they were not set free, and he kept them there even longer. So, and we're not sure exactly what he had done to begin with anyways with them, or what he was planning to do. So, obviously very good that she was able to do it. And so with this, she actually may win her job back and even get her life back on track as a result, right? Because this is such a huge high profile case, and that now she's solved it. And so, so maybe this will give her, that chance to get her life back on track, get that job back, and kind of get back to her old self a little bit, or maybe even better, right? Maybe even upgrade that. So anyways, but again, we have to ask the question, what does this mean? Like, yeah, it's good to get her job back and everything, but how in the hell did she know these girls were there? And is she going to be using this power for good? Is she going to learn how to use this power, right? So a lot of things at play here, kind of behind the scenes or under the surface, that are going to have to be answered in the next few episodes. So anyways, then at the end of the episode here, we find out that Ben's wife, Grace, has someone in her life and doesn't know what to do or how to tell Ben the news. And we also see that her daughter asks her what she's going to do about it. And so this obviously means that the daughter knows. And so, I don't know. Overall, I thought this was a little cliche. I knew it pretty much from the start. It was very predictable that this, is very foreseeable that you could see this happening. But again, we'll have to see how Grace handles it. And, it's understandable, though. 5.5 years. I mean, and, you think your husband's dead. I'm not surprised that, she would do something like that. And the daughter is obviously, she knows about it too. So I'm guessing that you maybe even live with them. Who knows? Anyway, so that'll have to be dealt with, I assume, next episode. And we'll see how Grace delivers that news to Ben and how he's going to react. So then we see at the very end of the episode here, Michaela and Ben find out or kind of realize that it's not just the two of them that are hearing these voices and are feeling this pain right in their head, kind of telling them to do stuff. And so they figure it can't be just us, right? It's got to be everyone on that plane. And they are right. All of the passengers, we see a little sequence there of all of them hearing these voices and experiencing these same things. So all the passengers from the flight then join and kind of come together at the end of the episode here, and they go to the runway that they've all been kind of led to with these images that they've been fed of the plane on this runway, right? So they all come back to the runway where the plane is being held, and they all kind of stand there and watch as suddenly the engine explodes on this plane that essentially, engulfs the plane and destroys any evidence of the plane that was left, right, for these feds to kind of investigate, as we see in the episode. So all of that stuff, all destroyed now, and this whole group of people are kind of called to watch it, right? And so, really crazy stuff here. Does this mean that they're never going to find out what happened, right? Is that the case now? And I really love the line so a really great line to start us off, right? Funny how one little decision can ruin your life, but also save it. And then they end off with this one. As for the group of us, this was just the beginning. So 2 great lines to start off the episode and end the episode. So I give them a lot of credit for that. There was some really kind of, good dialogue, not all the time in the episode, but some really nice pieces of dialogue throughout the episode that were really great, kind of embodied that theme, the overall theme of the show. So anyways, this was just the beginning, and of course she's narrating that part. So anyways, this is just the beginning. This is episode 1, and I can't wait for more episodes. So anyways, that'll just about do it for the recap of this one. Alright, so now on to my rating and some more overall thoughts of the pilot. So in terms of a rating, I'm going to give this one a 4.3 out of 5. Now, I want to explain this rating a little bit because, for me, actually, in my channel, that's kind of pretty low. Not really, but, it's kind of low compared to some other stuff I check out. But anyways, I do feel at the end of the day, this pilot and this kind of series is ultimately a paint-by-the-numbers pilot. To me, at least, that's what this was. And it was really cliche at times. Again, you have, Ben's wife, Grace. Oh, she has a boyfriend now in the 5.5 years. It's just some other stuff in there. I mean, of course, Michaela's fiance is remarried now. It just kind of goes on and on with some of the cliche stuff and some of the predictable stuff that you could have seen happening here. Although they do throw in a nice twist with her finding these girls and the whole dogs thing. So that was that was a big twist that I didn't see coming. That wasn't cliche and really pushing the boundaries. So I did like that. So I'm giving credit where credit's due, don't get me wrong. But I do feel like some of the points in this episode were just kind of cliche and kind of paint by the numbers. But I will say, though, like for a network series, for a network pilot, this is great. I mean, it just depends how you compare it, right? Obviously, you can't compare network series on NBC to shows on HBO, right? You just can't make that comparison. No matter how much you want to, you can't. It's just not fair, right? So comparing this to other network series and other pilots I've seen on network television, I would say this is a great pilot and it looks like a great series. But again, comparing to other shows and kind of, the general, television, I do think it's kind of a paint by the numbers, kind of cliche. But that doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable, that it's not entertaining. I mean, for some people, they love that format, right? And for some people that totally works, and maybe that's the only thing that works for them. Maybe they like that kind of, familiar format that they like following along with, and that's totally understandable, for sure. For me, I've just checked out, a lot of shows recently that have kind of been, outside of network television and not following the same format. So maybe it's just me that's kind of not used to this and kind of, used to maybe higher expectations. But anyways, that's what it is. That's my thoughts. I will say it was very fast-paced, especially the first act. Like I said, 10-minute first act about, and we got everything pretty much, right? Like everything. So that was definitely something to note for this one. Very fast-paced, but I do feel like it kind of slowed down towards the end of the episode, which was nice, which gave us that, a little bit better of, kind of more of an intimate feeling with these characters and getting to know them a little bit better, and the feelings, the emotions around it. Was good when they slowed it down a little bit. But that's one thing I do think is the first act. I feel like they could have slowed things down a little bit. One, to make it seem a little bit more realistic, and two, to actually meet these characters. Like, we still don't know much about these characters after this whole first pilot, right? But we do know the events, right? So they focus more on the events than the characters. And I feel like maybe you extend what happened in Act 1 to maybe 2 acts. You extend it to about 10 more minutes. And I just felt like we could have got a little bit more character development, a little bit more emotion, and it would have felt a little bit more real in that situation, right? Because, let's be honest, I'm pretty sure that people would react a lot differently in this type of situation than these characters did. So, anyways, I will say though, like I said at the beginning, great cast for this show. Athena Karkanis, J.R. Ramirez, Melissa Roxburgh, and I think Josh Dallas is his name. All great actors. And really, honestly, like, this cast really drew me into this one, along with the concept. But the cast, really, really great. Especially for a new network pilot. Sometimes it's hard to get, actors of this caliber and get a cast like this. But it seems really good. So that also speaks to, maybe, the future of this series, in that all these cast members thought it was pretty good and they signed on. So maybe it is actually, a pretty great series and pretty, great stories. So, anyways, so overall, yeah, great cast for this one. And, for a network pilot, very good. I would say it's a great pilot and looks like a great series. But again, kind of that paint by the numbers, kind of cliche a little bit pilot, that you're going to see on network television. So, and that's the thing, like, some network TV shows, the pilots are out of this world, and, the shows that don't follow that format that are on network television, it's really impressive. So I would say this is kind of an average. I don't think it's a negative, but it's just kind of they're not doing anything new. You know what I mean? So anyways, favorite character for this one, I'm going to pick Michaela Stone, because she's the one we got kind of closest with. And she's played by Melissa Roxburgh, who was just recently in Valor. She's had, kind of significant role in Supernatural. She's recurring on there, and she's been in Star Trek Beyond. So those are kind of 3 big ones as of now, and then along with this one. And I thought she was great in this episode. I think she was maybe the best performance, also because she got the most screen time, of course. But I feel like the writing was kind of iffy in some of her little exchanges, especially with Jared. But I feel like she did the best that she could do with the lines, and she did a great job. I really bought into what her emotion was and what her feeling was in those scenes. So Melissa Roxburgh, great job. And Michaela Stone, the centerpiece of this show. I do wonder if she's going to continue narrating the show for the rest of the season. That's something that I don't know. I'm not sure if I like it or not yet. I'm not sure. Maybe it'll grow on me. Maybe it won't. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But anyways, really great stuff here for her character, and we're gonna have to see where she goes from here and where everybody goes from here, and how she kind of integrates now into this new world to her. So anyways, guys, that'll just about wrap it up for my review of Manifest Season 1, Episode 1, or pilot, you know, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be doing weekly reviews, at least for the first few episodes here of Manifest, just because I'm really intrigued with this pilot, and I gotta keep watching a few more episodes to learn more about it. So if you guys are along for the ride, that would be awesome. Check out weekly reviews here on the channel. Should be Mondays or Tuesdays, Monday night or Tuesdays, that they'll be out. So anyways, guys, thank you again so much for watching this review. Thank you so much for your support on the channel. The channel's been growing a lot lately, so I do really appreciate that. Gotta say thanks for that. So anyways, guys, appreciate it. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next review, which may be next week for Manifest Season 1, Episode 2.
To shout out feeling lonely.